Hey there, thanks for tuning in and welcome to another Ellipsis Drive podcast. Here we dive into the stories of people, companies, and technologies that transform and empower spatial data-driven industries. My name is Rosalie van der Maas, and today we'll dig into the topic of data sovereignty in the geospatial space. We'll be doing that with today's guest, Joel Cumming. Joel is CTO at SkyWatch and has been for nearly 9 years now. Joel, welcome. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rose.
Sure thing. The pleasure is all mine. To kick things off, I propose we start at the beginning. About a decade ago, there was a man named Joel, and he decided to join SkyWatch. Can you tell us a bit more about this Joel from the past and what SkyWatch had set out to do at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. SkyWatch, not a co-founder here, but one of the very early employees, employee number two. So very early days. But prior to SkyWatch, I had no experience in the space industry or Earth observation at all. My background was building web applications kind of early in my career, but always focusing on data, making data simple to use for manufacturers, for insurance companies. I was fortunate enough to work at BlackBerry. At the time, BlackBerry was a rocket ship, a Canadian darling in the tech industry, and was fortunate enough to start as a data engineer at BlackBerry and kind of grow up to a role of director of advanced analytics and big data systems. So leading a team of data scientists, data engineers, back-end developers, front-end developers, and we built data products to help understand and adapt the products to our customers. And so had a lot of fun there, built some really interesting things around people's propensities and their likelihoods to do things and how that could improve their experiences on the devices. And then eventually moved to a startup, flipped out of the kind of the enterprise world into the startup world and joined a chat app company also in the region called Kik. Kik at the time was very popular among US teens. It had about 40% market share amongst US teens. And this was at a time when direct messaging inside apps natively wasn't necessarily available. So Instagram and Twitter and Xbox, people didn't have a way to communicate with each other. So they would use Kik and they'd have the same handle, the same username on Kik that they would have in these other apps. And that's how people would find each other and chat with each other before texting and phones were available to children at a younger and younger age.
Wow.
And so, so it was a lot of fun. At Kik went from leading this team of about 60 to being, a team of one. My first day on the job at Kik, the request from the CEO was, he said, here's a petabyte of logs. In a week, I want you to tell me why people churn. And so, I hadn't used AWS before or cloud services. So I was really getting back to be hands-on, built up some infrastructure. At the end of the week, I didn't have the perfect answer for why people churn, but I had some insights that we could share. So that was a lot of fun to be able to build that. And Kik was early into the chatbot phenomenon, and certainly not nearly as sophisticated as AI agents are today. But this concept that you could communicate with the chatbot and get things done more efficiently was something that Kik had as well. So it was in my time at Kik that I was, staying in touch with the local tech ecosystem here in Kitchener-Waterloo. We're about an hour west of Toronto. And so I came across this company called SkyWatch, and SkyWatch was doing some really interesting things, had just raised their seed round and was looking to hire. And so I thought I would reach out and see, what was going on in this company. Quickly found out really the problem they're trying to solve is a data engineering problem as well. It's how do you aggregate a lot of data from a lot of different sources? How do you normalize it to make it simple for a data scientist to consume? And then how do you do that at scale and become the place where everybody goes to receive or to purchase Earth observation imagery? So yeah, it's been quite a ride in the last almost 9 years, as you mentioned. And some of the highlights you get to when you start very early in a company, you get to have almost no legacy or technical debt. So we were able to jump in and build a platform, largely a serverless platform. So that was fairly new at the time in the cloud. And so we were able to take advantage of that, meaning in the workloads of Earth observation data, they can be very spiky, that there's not billions of transactions, there's thousands of transactions, but the data is very large. The imagery is very large, as you know. So being able to have the amount of processors you need to spin up and process that and then spin down to nothing at the end was good for cost. And so we were able to also use that to make our platform very flexible. So we can integrate systems and APIs from other companies, other satellite providers, other image processing capabilities in a very clean way with this architecture. So it's been a lot of fun. We've grown the team. We've got about 90% of the world's Earth observation satellites now on the platform, and we continue to strive towards our goal of making Earth observation simple for everyone.
That's amazing. I can definitely see how you are drawn into the Earth observation world when you'd never sort of worked in it before, because it definitely poses a very interesting technical challenge that I see a number of very high-skilled developers and architects sort of be fascinated by. So I can imagine how that may have felt. But sounds like your mission has like stayed true throughout the better part of a decade.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've learned a lot along the way, as I'm sure most companies in this industry have. And when we started, really with this iteration of our products, it was 2018 when we launched our first version of at the time what we called Earth Cache. And so that was in the early days, we thought we were going to be the provider of open data for everyone, and this would be a subscription service that we could offer. We very quickly found out that everybody could get the open data from other places, and they really didn't have a huge value from finding it from us. So as we evolved, we started adding commercial data to the platform, and it's a challenge if you are going to try and start like a Costco, for example. It's very challenging when you want to buy in bulk from a supplier and offer low prices. How do you start that, right? It's a bit of a chicken and an egg. But we slowly did that. We brought Planet on board, was our first commercial satellite operator, and we've grown from there. But yeah, that was certainly a challenge in the early days. Was how do you find this traction, this product market fit, and then get those eyeballs, get more people coming because they know that you have all the data that they need.
Yeah, it's definitely a big rock that needed demolishing within the industry to indeed like get prices down, get that volume up, but indeed like chicken and egg problem. You're saying it right. So it's amazing that you guys sunk your teeth in that and stuck it out. Um, as mentioned, having sort of laid that groundwork, we would like to dig into the topic of data sovereignty as well, which is just to get everyone on the same page, the principle of ensuring local control over data, including its processing and where it's hosted. And it's a topic that is of increasingly pressing concern as the world around us feels to grow a bit more dangerous and a bit more unpredictable. So as you look at the way SkyWatch provides its services to a myriad of clients all over the world, how does this fit into that picture? Does that mean you or your clients run into particular challenges that need some adjustment, or has the system already been built to deal with challenges like this?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's sort of multiple facets to it. So I guess starting on the customer side, understanding there's sort of three levels, I would say, loosely defined levels of customer requirements around data sovereignty. There are customers that simply don't care. They want imagery, and it doesn't really matter where it's stored or where it's coming from. Then there's the next level up, which tends to be more enterprise focused, and enterprises that are less comfortable with cloud-based SaaS software and more comfortable with either private cloud or on-prem data hosting and sovereignty. And then there's sort of the government and military use cases, which clearly need to run in a protected environment, clearly sometimes air-gapped environment, so that there is no connectivity to the internet. And so those are kind of the three different levels that we see pretty commonly in the industry. So also interestingly enough, it's if you follow the earnings of a lot of satellite companies that are publicly traded, you can see there has been quite a shift from commercial to government over the last few years. And part of that, I think, is the market is not moving as quickly as everybody would hope it would. Mm-hmm. The other part of that is prior to about 2022, the venture capital world was quite different than it is now. And we saw, SkyWatch experienced this as a lot of other companies did too that are VC funded. And it went from a world where interest rates were very low, venture capital money was very easy to get, money was almost free, and the idea was growth at all costs. So the venture capitalists wanted you to put this money to work right away and spend. And around 2022 is when things sort of started to change, and these venture capitalists started thinking about maybe we need to have more sustainable businesses here, so measured growth, and started dialing back a lot of expenses and spend ratios to industry norms and looking at profit margins, which probably everyone should have been doing before that anyway. So what that did was squeezed out a lot of the commercial market out of the industry. And we would see these kind of crazy ideas people would come to us with, and we were always supportive. But like, for example, one company came to us and they wanted to use satellite imagery and sell their product to the English Premier League. And the concept was they wanted to measure soil moisture and field conditions on opponents' pitches before the team would go there, so they could optimize their strategy and plans based on the field conditions, which they wouldn't have access to any other way other than through satellite imagery. So, innovative and creative ideas, but not necessarily sustainable businesses. So these were the things that kind of got weeded out. And I think a lot of the momentum in the market in Earth observation had been built on the consumerization of Earth observation data. And so why that's important in terms of data sovereignty is, as things shifted, a lot of the suppliers also shifted to spending more of their time on government, state and local governments, municipal governments, those kinds of things, and enterprises that were already buyers of Earth observation data. And so SkyWatch is in the same situation. And we have currently, I mentioned EarthCache before. Currently, we have two products, so we don't use that name anymore. The platform underneath is API based. Mm-hmm. So we built two products: one for basically a e-commerce, more B2C style shopping cart experience, where you can come to SkyWatch, you can search for an image, you can click on it, you can buy it and check out with your credit card. The other is one called SkyWatch Hub, and SkyWatch Hub is more meant for power users or enterprises that are buying larger amounts of Earth observation, have multiple teams using it, and so forth. And so in terms of data sovereignty, sort of two clear differentiations for us. If you really don't mind where the data comes from or where it goes, you can buy that through SkyWatch Explorer. If you want to have more control over where the data is coming from and who sees the types of things that you're searching for, and potentially where that is deployed, if that's deployed in a private cloud or software as a service, then that's where SkyWatch Hub is helpful. So we do see an increasing number of enterprises that are more interested in data sovereignty than they have been in the past, and certainly working with government and government agencies and geopolitical conditions that are at play today. There is a lot more focus on each individual country having data sovereignty and the ability to control their own destiny, whether it's just obtaining the data, but also capturing the data. So mm-hmm. The other side of the market being the suppliers. And so, the supply side, we've seen, working with all these different suppliers around the world, there are certain restrictions that these suppliers put on data. So it ties to data sovereignty as well. If you are a French satellite operator, you tend to be governed by the laws of France, and you comply with the countries that are known bad actors or are not friends of that country. And so in many cases, customers of that satellite company are not able to provide data over certain areas based on the geopolitical context of that particular satellite operator. So we have, fortunately, systematically have been able to apply all of these rules. So they can be quite complicated, especially when you have all these satellite operators on board. But what that means is, again, in a data sovereignty perspective, that you come to a platform, you can search for a particular location, and rules are automatically applied that say, no, you cannot capture data over Gaza or over Venezuela, for example, but you can over another location. So North Korea, as an example there. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a multifaceted problem that's rooted in both enterprise values of sovereignty, obviously government values, and then also the satellite operators complying with the laws and regulations in which the countries that they operate.
Okay, so it sounds like for at least for the organization buying data, you've managed to make things significantly easier because they don't need to mind all the rules. You did that for them. And if something's not allowed to be searched, it simply won't show up. So that sounds pretty commoditized. But I want to loop back to what you mentioned around SkyWatch Explorer and SkyWatch Hub, if I heard that correctly, because it sounds like that's been a significant shift in sort of product development, assuming that one is sort of the SaaS version and the other one can be deployed locally. Is that indeed something new, or has SkyWatch from the get-go made sure of being able to service clients anywhere, whichever cloud and whichever place they may prefer to be hosted in?
It's something new, and it's following the market. And to be clear, right now, Hub, we're in the process of developing Hub in such a way that it can be deployed in a private cloud. So that is something that we've heard from our customers, and we do have capabilities right now that bridge some of those gaps. So, for example, if you order data from us and you want it delivered directly to your own cloud platform, then you can configure the system to do that so that the data is delivered to your location. But we've also heard from other customers that they want the entire platform to be deployed in a private cloud. And so that's something that was a shift for us because, when you go into, 9 years ago, thinking about building serverless microservices on a platform, that's not necessarily conducive to deploying something either on-prem or in a private cloud across different cloud providers. So that's something that's new for us that we're working on, but certainly something that we feel is a worthy investment. And so that there's a lot that can go into that as well. We've done localization through the product as well, but yeah, the ability to have full control over deployment certainly is something the governments are all interested in as well.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine this is a more recent development because I can also speak for ourselves when I recognize like when you first get started, you want to keep things simple, you want to keep things serverless and purely in the cloud, and then reality hits and you find that the market definitely has other plans for you, at least to some degree. So I understand sort of the two-track road here, and I think it's something that a lot of people in the EO industry can relate to. And I think your analysis as to sort of why the shift has happened over the years is quite astute. So that's rather interesting. So as you see, as you see how SkyWatch faces the future and delivering a product in an ecosystem that, on the one hand, needs openness, needs flexibility, needs interoperability, but at the same time also requires that security and that privacy and that independence. How do you make sure that you keep delivering value in a market that doesn't pick a lane? Like how do you give them everything? Is that part of a product roadmap that basically bets on two horses here, or respects the two tracks, or do you see a way to sort of marry everything? What's your vision on that?
Yeah, certainly, at least in Canada, the term dual use gets a lot of attention, and so the concepts, obviously for government and defense, there are much more strict requirements, certifications, and rules that you need to follow tend to take longer, obviously longer sales cycles and so forth. But many of the same principles apply, and so we feel that the developments in the commercial market of the people who are buying Earth observation data today are the ones that generally come from larger organizations with larger teams. Verticals that we're very focused in are things like mining and oil and gas and agriculture, engineering, and construction. These are kind of our main verticals that we focus on. Certainly, we have more agriculture and forestry and others that we support as well. But those organizations tend to have these more strict requirements. They're not looking at sovereignty or security as theater. They're looking at it as they really want a bulletproof system. So we've gone through the process the last year of being certified for SOC 2 Type 2, which is more of a North American certification, kind of similar to ISO 27001, which is more common in Europe. We've also been certified with a NIST 800-171 certification, which essentially allows you to sell software that the government can use as a service. And there's obviously more certifications that you can get. Now, as a company, as a small company, as I'm sure you're familiar with, you can get really wrapped around the axle in terms of certifications if you go too far on them. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, many of them have a fair amount of overlap. So we've learned a lot along that way, and we've one of our security vendors, their tagline is not just security theater, and we really subscribe to that as well. We want to actually be very secure, and ensure that our customers can have the benefits of that. So that dual use is important. But certainly, as with anything, GDPR certification, we went through that as well. In privacy, and through my background with other companies, generally what most companies do is they pick the most strict privacy laws in the world, and then they conform to those, and that way everything else falls under that umbrella, and they're sort of de facto compliant with all the other certifications. And so we feel like that as well with defense. Is there's certainly some interesting things that come out of the defense industry. If your system is in a top secret environment and fully air gapped, and they call that high side, if it's a high side system, then generally the data can't be shared outside of that. And many of these organizations, they actually want to share data with other departments within the same government, and that can be a challenge as well. So finding that balance of, they look at you as a commercial provider, now you're selling to government, but they want you to sort of remain in that commercial mold such that the data can be shared more easily with other groups, whereas if it's classified, then it can't be shared at all. So this interesting nuance, when a spy satellite takes an image, it can't necessarily be shared amongst departments in a government. But if a commercial company takes a satellite image, that's much more easily shared within the government. So trying to understand those dynamics and build systems that support that, but the dual use purpose really keeps the government and the commercial side in lockstep.
Interesting. So sounds like certification for you guys, and indeed not just theater, but the actual commitment to security is a key pillar of moving forward. And they also understand that indeed some clients, primarily government clients, do indeed want it all. They want that security. They also want that shareability. And then it's your challenge to meet them where they're at. And sounds like that's progressing neatly.
Indeed. Yes.
Very nice. Great. So I think with that, we are at time. Joel, so thank you so much for sharing your story and your insights here today. For those who'd like to know more, we'll definitely leave some links in the description so you can find the resources you're looking for. And then thanks for being with us today, and on to the next one. Cheers.
Thank you.